Discussing an animal communication. Now, in our previous lecture, you all learned about what is meant by animal communication, and you learned about a method, a model for communication, interspecific communication, and then intra-specific communication. We learned about one of the major communication patterns that is seen in animal communities, populations, or animals, and that is visual communication. Today, we are going to learn about the auditory communication and olfactory communication. Auditory communication and olfactory communication. So let's begin with the auditory communication. Now, what you see in this photograph are two persons shouting at each other, right? So you see that their eyes are open so that they can see each other. That is to say that the facial expression of each person can be observed. That is visual communication. But at the same time, you notice that they have opened their mouths as well. So the reason why they open their mouth is they are shouting at each other. That is to say that they are communicating with each other using sound. So the sound that this person makes is heard by the other person. Similarly, the sound that this person makes is heard by the other person. That is, therefore, there is auditory communication going on between these two persons, right? Now, you are listening to me. So we are communicating with each other by auditory communication. So what I talk here is heard by you, right? You see, the auditory communication therefore involves bioacoustic signals that can be heard. Bioacoustic signals are the signals that are produced by animals. Bioacoustic signals, and they should be heard. Now, when you consider about the sound production, now sound is produced in a vast array of animals. Do you want me to turn on my camera? So yes, so I turned on my camera, right. Now, you know, different animals use different methods to produce sound. Now, for example, when we consider the mammals and the birds, the sound that they produce is said to have a vocal origin because sound is produced by the mouth. And then when you consider about the chirping sound of crickets, now I'm showing you a cricket in here, right? And they although they have mouths, they do not use the mouth to produce the sound. Instead, they use their wings, particularly the forewings, to produce a sound. For that, they oscillate the forewings in a rhythmic fashion. That way, the sound is produced. Now, when you consider about the whales, dolphins, right, and these animals, they live underwater. So while underwater, they produce again sound, and the sound is produced with the assistance of the lungs and also pharyngeal sacs. And then the croaks, the croaking, the call of the frogs is what you call the croaks. The croaking of frogs. For that, they have a particular, balloon-like structure. I will show you one later. That is what you call the vocal sacs. And then another very nice example, the rattlesnakes, right? Just before I started this lecture, I happened to watch a small video clip in the YouTube. That's about the rattlesnakes, and the video tells how the rattlesnake produces the sound. They produce the sound by vigorously shaking the loose segments in the tail.
Recording stopped.
Had a power failure in this end. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay.
Recording in
Okay.
progress.
Now, when you consider about the rattlesnakes, now they produce sound by quaking the loose segments in the tail. Okay. Now I'm making a particular sound. Tell me if you hear this. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is exactly how the rattles, the rattlesnakes make the sound. Now, you see, why do the animals make sounds? Now, for example, when you consider this bird here, now they use the sound that is to convey warnings, for example, crows, and then also to attract mates, defend their territories, and also to coordinate group behaviors, to live in a group. Birds, like humans, cannot talk. They communicate with each other through a beautiful musical language. That is what you call the bird call. And that bird call is used to convey warnings, attract mates, defend their territories, and also coordinate group behaviors. Then the second photograph, the monkey. You see that the monkey is again making a call. It is what you call a monkey cry, right? Then now this, it indicates that a predator is near, and this message is given to the other members in the group, in the troop. And this particular monkey, it's called the vervet monkey, right? Now they have a unique sound for each predator. Now, for example, for a leopard, they have a particular sound. If it is another predator, say a lion, a different sound, right? It's interesting, isn't it? And then when you consider about the frogs, now the frogs, they also make sounds. They sound, only the males can produce a sound. For the production of the sound, they have a particular structure, what you call the vocal sac. Now I have given you a cross-sectional diagram of a frog. Now this is a bullfrog. It's quite large. See? Now this person is a man, right? It's not the bullfrog. Now you can compare the size of the bullfrog with this person. They are huge. Right now, these during the breeding season occurs in frogs. Actually, when it is raining, the reason is when it is raining, there is a lot of water accumulated in small places, and those are the places where the frogs lay eggs, the females, right? So they don't mate during the dry season. Now, when making the sound, what happens is that it inhales, it opens the nostrils, and then it inhales, and that is then pushed into the lungs. So the thoracic area of the frog is quite inflated, and then that when expelling that water into the outside, what it does is that it closes the nostril, as well as the mouth, and then with a force, it pushes out the air in the lungs into the vocal cavity through this place, what you call the larynx. Now, when the air flows through the larynx, a kind of a sound is produced, and then that sound is, amplified in the vocal sac. It rapidly, expands and, squeezes. Then when that happens, the air surrounding it is, vibrated, giving off a big sound. Now, if you want to hear the bullfrog quacking, right? Now, I have indicated here a YouTube link. Of course, right after the lecture, I will share some video clips related to some communication methods, or visual communication as well, into the cal, so that those are not very long ones, so you can watch them leisurely. Right now, the reason why the frogs call is that the males produce the sound just to attract the females to them. The male that produces the biggest sound, the most powerful sound, will attract more females. When you consider the dolphins, they live underwater, right? So, underwater, they can see, but, visibility underwater is not that much. Therefore, they produce sounds, and the sound causes the water around them to make some waves, and the sound waves will pass through the water, and sometimes these sound waves may travel up to several kilometers. So a dolphin or a whale who is in here now produces sound underwater, and that sound can be heard by the other members in the group who are living far, far away. Now, another example, fish. Have you ever heard that the fish produce sound? Now, one of the best example is what you call the drumfish, right? So they produce a kind of a sound underwater like this. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. That's a sound the drumfishers make. In America, these drumfishers are very. I don't really remember the exact place where they live. They live in a certain estuary. This estuary is extreme. It is said the estuary is extremely noisy in the afternoon because of the drum sounds made by the fishes. Now they make that sound again to attract, the females. Again, I have given you the video link for drum fishes, how they make the sound, so that you can watch it. You can listen to the drumfish sound leisurely. Now, for the production of the sound, now they have a particular, gas-filled organ inside the body. That's what you call the swim bladder. Now, the swim bladder helps the fish to float in water, to maintain the swimming level in the water column, right? When it is full of air, the body density of the fish becomes somewhat less, so that the fish can move up. If the fish wants to go down, the swim bladder squeezes, letting the air inside it to go out. So the density increases, so it is easier for the fish to, swim into deeper areas. But in addition to that, in this particular fish, the swim bladder helps the fish to make the sound. Okay, Now I'm going to tell you another very interesting sound making method by some animals, and sound hearing method by some animals. In other words, a communication method, and that is what you called echolocation. And the echolocation can be understood by understanding the principle of the echo sounder. You know, now echo sounder was invented somewhere around 1950 by a German scientist, right? So in an echo sounder, the principle is the particular instrument emits a sound, and then the sound, you know, travels. When it hits on an object, a hard object, the sound wave will be reflected back to the machine, right? Back to the instrument. So the instrument has a certain area that can receive that incoming waves. Now the machine can measure the time duration taken for the wave to come back from its initial release, and then the distance from the to the object from the machine can be measured. It's a very simple principle, and that principle is applied to produce echo sounders. Now, in order to measure the depth of the sea, echo sounders are usually used. Now, at the bottom, you see there is a boat or a ship, and under it there is the echo sounder, and the echo sounder, you know, releases the sound waves, and the sound waves pass through the water and then hits on the floor, the bottom, and then will be reflected back. And the reflecting waves will be caught by the echo sounder again, and then the time is measured by itself, and then the depth can be calculated. Now, this is the equation that the echo sounder, the distance calculating principle in the echo sounder. Nowadays, echo sounders are used for many human activities. As you see in this diagram in here, we have a fishing vessel, a ship that is designed specifically to catch fish in the ocean. So underwater, you know, it is difficult to see, but with the help of a echo sounder, the fishermen who are in the ship can locate large fish shoals, malu ahing, right? So immediately after they locate in the fish shoal, the fish can be caught by, you know, setting nets, troll nets and gill nets, etc. Now this same principle, this is the principle that is seen in some animals, like for example, bats, and also dolphins, whales, etc., to communicate underwater. The bats, in particular, in the water, in air. That is the echo. That's what you call the echolocation or biozona. Here, what you see in this diagram is a bat. Now, the bat, you know, makes some sounds, right? Now, the bat makes some sound. So these yellow lines indicate the sound passes through the air, travels through the air. When a sound wave hits on a hard object on its along its flight path, the sound wave is reflected back to the bat. So the bat hears it, and then it decides the distance precisely. Exactly the same principle is used by the dolphins and the whales underwater. Okay, it's beautiful, isn't it? Now, this was this echolocation, the discovery of echolocation in animal, it is said was quite a coincidence observation made by a particular scientist, right? According to this observation, now he was having a drink in his room, and then in the evening, and he observed that there are some moths flying around the light. ස්වභාවික දෙයක් නේ නේද? ලයිට් එකක් වටේට මේ මොත්ස්ලා කැරකෙන එක. While he was having the drink, he was looking at them, and he was running his fingers over the the rim of the glass tumbler where the drink was. Now, he immediately observed, while he was running his finger over the rim, the glass tumbler emits a particular sound. At that very moment, he observed that the moths dropped to the ground. Then he did it again. The same thing was observed. A little later, he observed that some bats were flying here and there, small bats. The bats are insectivorous animals. Insectivorous animals means that they feed upon, they eat the insects. So he thought, well, like the glass tumbler produces this a particular sound, the bats are also making sound, and the moths can hear it. In order to avoid the bat, they just drop to the ground. That's an anti-predatory behavior, isn't it? Anti-predatory behavior. ප්‍රතිවිලෝපික චර්යා විලෝපණයෙන් අර වවුලගේ විලෝපණයෙන් බේරෙන්න තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ බිමට වැටුණා කියලා මෙයා හිතුවා. So based on this, he thought again and again on this particular observation, and then he finally concluded that a bat should have a kind of a sound producing mechanism and also a sound capturing mechanism, and that operates particularly in the night, because at night there is no light and the bats cannot see, and the bat locates the prey animal, the insects, by a kind of echo sounding method, right? And this quite incidence observation was made around 1940s, and thereafter people did so many different types of experiments, and they finally found that these animals have a unique echolocation communication mechanism. Now, echolocation helps the animal in different ways. Now, for example, to identify and communicate with friends. Now, this happens in whales and dolphins as well, right? And also to identify the enemies. Then move around in pitch darkness, right? Some blind people also use a kind of an echolocation mechanism to detect the distance, navigate, hunt, and also to avoid obstacles. Now, we are very much concerned about the communication. Therefore, you will understand that the echolocation helps these animals, the bats and the aquatic animals, to communicate with each other. There is a video clip, right? So, well, let's save time. So after the lecture, I will upload the video clips, all the video clips into the Cal, and then you will watch them. And now there is a little exercise for you. So you will have to answer. You will have to answer the organs that are involved in echolocation in bats. What kind of organs? And what is the sound frequency range that humans can hear? Now the bat, the bats can produce, sound that cannot be heard by humans, right? That cannot be heard by humans because they are high frequency sound. And how many chirps, for example, can a bat make in a second? Now the chirp is like this. Those are the kind of bat sounds. Okay, you will watch this small video clip. It's only a 5 minutes video clip, and then after that you will answer to these questions. Right. Now then, with this, let's move into the advantages and disadvantages in auditory communication. You see, auditory communication is very, very quick. You speak, I speak, you all hear. It's very quick. It is effective in the dark, in the water, among vegetation. Now, for example, the grasshoppers, now they communicate mainly using sound. Now, grasshoppers are easy prey for predatory birds. Therefore, they usually hide among vegetation. When they hide among vegetation, other members in the group cannot, see them. Therefore, what they use is sound to communicate. And then sound can go around obstacles that would interfere with visual signal. Maybe thing happen in the but still they cannot see. Sound can pass through. And then the information can be changed rapidly. Now, for example, listen to what I'm saying now. Sit, sit, sit. See that? Now that the pitch of the voice can be altered. Likewise, the pitch of the sound that the animals can make can also be altered, so that the alterations will make different kinds of meanings. So those are the advantages of auditory communication. Now, when we consider about the disadvantages, the first major disadvantage is that in sound, it is possible that an enemy see, right? And then the second disadvantage is not like the visual communication that we learned earlier. Auditory communication is somewhat close range communication. But compared to these advantages, the disadvantages are not that much. Right. Now, let's move into another very important communication method that is seen in animals. That is what you call olfactory communication, right? You see, I think I have seen some of these slides in one of my previous lectures as well. Here, what you see is that this dog is urinating at a tree, right? Of course, it is not very uncommon thing. When you take your dog out for a walk, then you will notice that it frequently, urinates at some prominent places, like, for example, lampposts, post office boxes, then sometimes taps also. Now, the question is, do they urinate to all of these places just because they need it, or just because they produce a lot of urine, or there must be a particular purpose for that, right? And then in this second example, what you see is a cat, digging a small hole, a small pit in the in soil, and then defecates in there, and thereafter it covers that feces. And we discussed about this earlier. What is the reason for them to do? Okay, let me now explain. Now these birds. Let me share the whiteboard. Can you all see the whiteboard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now suppose that we have a particular dog. So this is the area it lives. Now this area is called its territory. In Sinhala, we call it Vasama, territory. Now this whole area, the dog will protect from the intrusion of the other dogs. It will not allow usually other dogs in the neighborhood to come into this area. But if this area is quite large and there are many dogs coming from all around it, and if this dog needs to protect this area from the intrusions of all these dogs, then one thing it can do is to fight with them all. But is it possible for a single dog to do that? One of the best things that it can do is to indicate the others about the limits of its living area, the territory. So it urinates at particular, regular intervals around its territory. And the urine gives a particular smell and odor, a volatile smell that can be sensed by the other dogs. So they will know, therefore, well, this place is taken by some other dog. It could be dangerous if we go there. So the urination at the regular places, some prominent places around the territory, is done to communicate, as kind of a silent communication with the other dog. Now here a particular chemical is involved. A chemical is involved. Chemical is involved. Now when you consider, now this kind of urination around the territory boundary is performed by some other members in the dog family. For example, wolves, hunting dogs, hyenas, etc. Now, how about the cat? Now, let's consider that this is our ground, soil. Now, a cat, imagine 3 instances. A cat, digs a small hole in the soil, defecates, and then lets it as it is, like this, A. Second thing is, it covers the feces completely with soil. This is our second instance or option. And the third option is, it covers the feces only partially. Partially covers the feces. Okay. Now we have our sun. I'm sure you all have noticed that the cat's feces is extremely smelly. It's very smelly. Now during the daytime, the heat of the sun dries off the feces. Therefore, by the afternoon, it is quite dry. So the following morning, you won't able to, notice any smell in it. Initially, it gave off the bad odor, the outside areas. Now, in this case, the feces is very fresh because the feces will not be dried under the sun because it is now fully covered. But the problem is there is no way its smell to go out. In this example, the feces will remain in the environment for a longer period of time because it is partially covered. And since also it is partially covered, the smell can, give off to the surrounding area for a longer period of time. So the fresher the feces, more longer the smell it gives. Now the smell indicates the other conspecific members. Well, this particular area has been, occupied by another member in their own. So this half burying of feces is a method of communication performed by the cats. Now, this particular behavior is shown by the leopards, cheetahs, and wildcats, etc. Now, this is quite common in the cat family. Then, there is a very good reason for the cats not letting it fully dry and not covering it fully, but covering it only partially. Did you all understand this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good. Now let me go back to my presentation. So actually, now you will understand that these dogs and the cat, they are communicating with each other. They are communicating with each other using feces and the urine. It is because the feces and the urine has a particular smell, and the smell is a chemical that can be sensed by another person. With this understanding, we come into a very unique concept, that is what you call pheromone. You see, now if we use this word here, pheromone, that is to say that the urine contains some pheromones that are unique to this particular dog, and it's the urine of this the other dog is quite unique to it, and the cat's feces also has a kind of a pheromone that can be sensed. So a pheromone is a transmitted chemical signal that triggers a response in another individual of the same species. A pheromone is a transmitted chemical signal that triggers a response in another individual of the same species. Now, for example, pusek jara karla tino dakkot ehema eka අපිට තේරෙන්නේ පුසා ජරා කරලා කියලා. එච්චරයි. That's how we see it. But for another cat, a different meaning is given, and that meaning is, well, this tells about the particular living area of another animal. Usually, the animals do not cross those boundary lines. Now, the first pheromone was identified in 1959. That's about how many years ago? Then 60 years ago. Occurring in a particular moth that you call the silkworm moth. I will tell about the silkworm moth later. And then these kind of pheromones are particularly found common in social insects. Now, for example, have you seen this kind of entrails? I believe you all have seen. Now, this is an actual entrail. So in an entrail, what happens is that the ant who leads the group will drop its scent, SCENTS, scents, sugandhe, on the ground, and the other followers can sense it, and then they also secrete their pheromones on the ground, and then this is done by the others as well. So likewise, the entrail is produced, right? දැනත් මේ ඇන්ට්‍රේල් එකක් මකලා දාන්න විදියක් තියෙනවා. ඒ මකලා දාන්න විදිය තමයි දැන් ඔය මේ ඇන්ට්‍රේල් එක උදින් ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඇඟිලි තියාගන්නකො. හරිද? ඒකල බොහොම තදට පොළව ඇතිල්ුවාට පස්සේ the pheromone is no longer there. only in that case, right? So the ants in both things will not be able to trace anything. So they are quite confused for a while, and you will see that they will scatter for a while, and then eventually the ant trail is the scent trail is re-established again. Right. Now I tell you about the discovery of the first pheromones. This was found in a particular moth. That's what you call the silk moth. Silk moth. Its scientific name is Bombyx moriae. Right. Now, when you consider about these moths, there are females. The females are much bigger than the males. Um, um, in addition to that, body trait, difference, there is another huge difference. And that difference is that the males, now these are the sensory organs. That's what you call the antenna, sparshaka. Now, these antennae are heavily branched. They are big and heavily branched. You see this one. Now, the female's antennae are not that branched. They're quite small. Okay. Now, why do the males only have this branched antenna? Why don't the females have? There is another big difference. And the difference is in the female's rear end, there is a particular gland which is absent in the male. And the gland gives off a particular chemical substance, right? The chemical substance to which the males are attracted. The males are attracted. So I'll tell you the mechanism here. Let me use my whiteboard. Okay, now I'm going to make a drawing. Now consider we have an area. The area from here to here, let's say about 1 kilometer. And we have a female silkworm moth. Okay. So from its rear end, I told you there is a gland. Now this gland secretes a particular volatile substance. Ashpasili dravyak making pagirenol. Now this volatile substance, it is highly volatile, therefore it is evaporated into the air. These are the molecules of those substances. Later on, of course, the scientists identified the chemical structure of this substance. Now, this substance is known as the bombicol. It is named as bombicol because the chemical is secreted by this particular species. The scientific name of the silkworm of this Bombyx moriae. Bombyx moriae. Okay, so the bombicol is dispersed into over a long, vast area. Now we have here a male. It has this highly branched antenna. When I enlarge a part of this antennule, this is antenna. When you enlarge it, you will notice that now inside the antennule there are nerve axons. හරිද මේ ඇන්ටිනියුල් එකේ මේ පිට බිත්තිය මේකේ තනින් තන තියෙනවා පොඩි පොඩි සිදුරු මට ඒක දැන් ඉන්නකො මම හඳින්නවා මේකෙන් පාට කොහොමද මම මේක හොයාගන්නේ That is my pin මෙන්න මේක මේ විදිහට පිටපැත්තෙන් තියෙනවා මෙහෙම මේ සිදුරු තියෙනවා pores. If we enlarge an axon, if we enlarge this axon, you know, this is axolemma. There are sodium ions accumulated on the surface and less sodium ions inside the axon. So it is naturally negatively charged and the outside is positively charged. You know about the nerve transmission, nerve impulse transmission. For that to happen, you know, the sodium ions should go should pass through the axolemma, isn't it? Right. Then මේ sodium ion ඇතුළට යන මේ ස්ථාන සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වැහිලා තියෙනවා එක්තරා විශේෂිත අණු වර්ගයකින්. Now we call them the sodium gates. So naturally, under normal conditions, the sodium gates are closed. But whenever one of these bombicol molecules, you know, one is enough. One of these bombicol molecules, you know, pass through these pores and then joins with one of these sodium gate molecules. So the gate is open. Sodium ions will rush through it to the inner surface. Then a nerve impulse is generated, and the nerve impulse is carried to the animal's brain, and the animal will from the brain then to the flight, you know, the wings. So the wings will begin to flutter and it will, you know, be airborne for a while. And then he will, you know, rotate its antenna to find out the direction from which more of these bombicol molecules are coming to it, and then it eventually flies towards the female. Right now, this only the males are stimulated by this bombicol, the pheromone, not any other animal. No, birds and some other insects, they are not, you know, stimulated by this particular bombicol. So bombicol is a kind of a pheromone. Okay. So that is what is shown in here. See, now this part is enlarged. So, you know, the nerve impulse is generated, and then it goes into the animal's brain. So there are various types of, you know, pheromones. Some pheromones are called sex pheromones. The sex pheromones usually attract the opposite sex. And there are alarm pheromones. You know, alarm pheromones immediately upon releasing the pheromone, you know, the members in the group will know that there is something, you know, bad is going to happen. Therefore, it's good if all of them run for cover. Then there are food trail pheromones, like entrails and centrales, etc. So many different types of pheromones present. Now, these pheromones can also be categorized into two major types. Number one, that's what you call the releaser pheromone. Number two, the primer pheromone. Now, a releaser pheromone, it causes an immediate observable behavior. Now, for example, urine making, right? You know, our dog urinates, immediately another dog comes and sniffs it, so he senses it and he knows about the message. So sometimes it might, you know, run away. And the other type is what you call the primer pheromone, right? So the primer pheromones makes a kind of a long physiological reactions in the body, and in order to see the response, it takes a long time. Now, for example, I told you in my earlier lecture that in a bee colony, the queen, she's the only one who produces, who lays the eggs, and all the others are workers, excluding the drones, right? Now, in order to, I also told that the other worker bees are sterile, right? Now, it is the queen that make all those worker bees sterile. And she does it by one of her very important pheromones. And that pheromone is what you call the 9-oxy-2-decenoic acid. You know, scientists have identified the chemical structure of this particular pheromone that is released by the queen. It is also known as the queen substance. Right. Now, this idea of pheromone, since its discovery in 19, I told you that it was discovered in 1959, and some scientists thought, well, isn't it possible that we use this pheromone idea in insect control programs, right? So based on that, some scientists have developed, you know, pheromone traps. You know, in a pheromone trap, I have given a drawing of a pheromone trap. Here we have a trap here, and inside the trap, a particular chemical is used, right? It's not an insecticide, and the chemical that they are using is a kind of a pheromone that is produced by the pests in a particular agricultural land. හරිනේ. එතකොට එම pheromone එක මේ agricultural land එකේ පාවිච්චි කරනකොට කෘත්‍රිමව සංශ්ලේෂණය කරගෙන මේ බකට් එකට ඇදිලා එනවා ඒ කට්ටිය. ඉතින් ඊට පස්සේ මරලා දානවා. Right? So it is a very effective pest control method. You know, place lure into support baskets, a very small one. Lure means the pheromone, and then it is put into the trap. That's all what you have to do. And these pheromone traps are used even in Sri Lanka for the control of, you know, red weevil. Here, what you see is a coconut cultivation. Now, in some coconut cultivations, you might have, I'm sure, all of you have seen that there are only the coconut stumps. The crown is not inside. Now, this one example, another example, right? Another one dying. And this is because of a particular insect pest. Now, this insect pest is what you call the red weevil. Red weevil. Right? So it's a very serious coconut pest in coconut cultivations. So the coconut cultivation, the research institute, it's in Lunubila. They have introduced a red palm weevil pheromone gel, a kind of a trap, right? Now, this is not used in Sri Lanka, not only used in Sri Lanka, but many other coconut growing countries in the world, right? So likewise, now, okay, while we were students, one of our teachers in the chemistry department did a particular research on how to improve the pheromone trap for red weevil, right? And I have indicated part of that research paper. If you are interested in reading this, so, you know, it is freely available in the internet. You can read it. Right? So these pheromone traps are used to control many different insects pests. Now, for example, green stink bug, then cockroaches. Cockroach killer, it's a pheromone, right? And then another one, fruit fly. You know about those fruit flies, no? Vinasa karandat pheromone traps පාවිච්චි කරනවා. Right? So then finally, let me tell you about the advantages and disadvantages of olfactory communication. Okay, now you see, I have listed here the advantages. The major advantages are the olfactory communication. The chemicals, they carry information effectively in the night, in the day, and then they also can travel long distances, can last for hours or number of days. Visual communication, that's instant, right? And then auditory communication, again instant, but it is not with this olfactory communication. And then a little energy is needed to produce the chemical, the pheromone. And the other very important thing is that, it is species specific. Bombicol, it can be produced only by the silkworm moth, not by anyone else. Since it is species specific, so it's a very, a unique mode of communication, right? And then persist for a long time and continue to convey the message, etc. So there are disadvantages as well. Like everything on earth, there are advantages there. And then it lacks the diversity and gradation of the signal as seen in auditory and visual signal, right? Finally, I'm sure now you have a question to ask. Buddhiman, what is the question you are going to ask now about the pheromones? Is the question related to the pheromones in humans? Hello?
I've read that it's that there are possibly pheromones in humans, but I don't think it has actually ever been confirmed. As far as
Yes,
I know.
yes. It is possible that we also communicate with, pheromones, even in perfume industry. Scent hadana ayatana තියෙනවානේ. ඒගොල්ලෝගේ ලොකු ඇඩ්වර්ටයිස්මන්ට්ස් යනවා. Pheromone included. එන්න එහෙම ඔන්න ඔය ආදී වශයෙන්. ඉතින් පිරිමින්ගේ සෙන්ස් වලට පිරිමි ෆෙරමෝන් දාලා තියෙන නිසා ඒවට ගෑනු ඒගොල්ලෝ ආකර්ෂණය වෙනවා. ඒ විදිහටම ගෑනු ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ සෙන්ස් වලට ගෑනු අඳින සෙන්ස් වලට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ෆෙරමෝන්ස් අඩංගු කරලා තියෙන නිසා ඒගොල්ලන්ට පිරිමි ආකර්ෂණය වෙනවා. That's the kind of the message that has been given by the perfume producers. So many people, both men and women, they are quite lured by this particular kind of advertisement. So they would buy these scents. Further, these scents are extremely expensive. But we really don't have hard, fast evidence that the humans communicate using pheromones. It is possible, it has never been confirmed. Possible, because we are mammals, we secrete, various different types of chemical substances from our bodies. It's possible that we communicate using, using pheromones, but more research have to be carried out to confirm. Okay. So that's all I have to tell you about olfactory and auditory communication.